Fantasy freaks and geeks, what's up? James Coe here with you. 15 to 20 minutes is all I need to walk you through this wacky, crazy world of fantasy football. It is Thursday. You know what time it is. It is time now for the Sleepers. Let's freaking go. All right, we're going to start. Today's episode will focus on quarterbacks and wide receivers. Tomorrow, I usually break this up because there's just too many sleepers. The Sleeper King's got too many sleepers. Today, it's about the quarterbacks and wide receivers. Tomorrow, we'll hit those running backs and tight ends as well. Okay, we're going to start with Drake Maye taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you listened to an earlier episode talking about the waiver wire, I laid out why Drake Maye is a very good fantasy quarterback for week number 7 here. The Jags defense is last by a million miles in terms of fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. The 29.16 fantasy points they allow is 5 points more than the next worst of Tampa Bay. I just want to say that again. They are allowing 29 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. That is freaking nuts. Nearly 30 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. Yeah, go ahead and give me Drake Maye this week. I know he popped up on the injury report with a little bit of a knee injury, but I'm not worried about it. It sounds like it's going to be a very, very minor deal here. But again, just highlighting how bad the Jacksonville Jaguars have been. 4 straight quarterbacks have posted 2+ touchdowns and 24+ fantasy points. Again, 4 straight have posted 2+ touchdowns. That is insane. Again, Josh Allen, CJ Stroud, they're in this 4. Okay, that makes sense. They're going to pour it in. I get it. But Joe Flacco and Caleb Williams, Joe Flacco posted 359 pass yards and 3 touchdowns. Caleb Williams had his best day as a pro by far, 226 pass yards and 4 touchdowns. What does Drake Maye do here in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars? Baker Mayfield versus Baltimore. Now, this man does not technically count as a sleeper because did you know that Baker Mayfield is the quarterback 2 in fantasy football? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? In 6-point passing leagues, which, by the way, that should 100% absolutely be the standard, by the way. In 6-point passing leagues, he's the quarterback 1. Baker Mayfield, y'all, the QB1. That is insane. Ironically, the other top quarterback is also in this game in Lamar Jackson. But again, I know he's not a sleeper. I just wanted to bring out that point that Baker Mayfield is somehow the QB1. And by the way, he's got another great matchup. He has another great matchup on the books here. The Ravens have been getting gashed by quarterbacks. They've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to that position. So go ahead and start Baker Mayfield with confidence. My God, the QB1 on the season. Good for him, man. I'm happy for him. Justin Herbert versus Arizona. Now, this dude does count as a sleeper because even though he is a bigger name than Baker Mayfield, he's like the quarterback 26 or 27 right now in fantasy football. So yeah, absolutely qualifies as a sleeper quarterback. The Cardinals are 4th worst in quarterback pressure rate, and I think that bodes extremely well for Justin Herbert, whose mobility has been compromised. I mean, let's be real. He has been hampered by injury all year long, so that's a good thing. The 71.8 completion rate allowed to quarterbacks, that's the 2nd worst in the NFL, as is the 8.13 yards per attempt allowed. They give up big plays. Justin Herbert is can every now and again find those big plays as well. Overall, Arizona has allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to that position group. So Justin Herbert, I think, is a very strong sleeper this week. All right, we move on to wide receivers here. Again, we talked about Drake Maye. We talked about how Jacksonville has essentially given up on the defensive side of the football. If Drake Maye has a good game, I promise you, Pop Douglas will have a good game. Okay, Pop is likely to be right there, leading the charge for the New England Patriots. With about 75% of his snaps coming while lined up inside, Douglas's short and quick game, and I said this in a previous episode, but his quick game meshes perfectly with Drake Maye. It's hot sauce and fried chicken, baby. It's peanut butter and jelly. Let's freaking go. According to Reception Perception, Pop's best route is the slant route. Maye, look, his best route, according to reception perception, is the 9 route, but you just don't throw those that often, right? In terms of realistic, NFL routes that you're going to throw more commonly, slant route, again, right near the top. Okay, so by the way, go check it out, receptionperception.com, if you want to go do that. Pop's best route is, of course, the slant route. Meanwhile, Maye, when he's not looking for those big plays, slant route always readily available for him. And by the way, Demario's touchdown on week 6 came on the slant route. Yep, you guessed it. Jacksonville has given up the 4th most receptions to receivers lined up inside. 80% completion rate allowed to inside wide receivers. That ranks as the 2nd worst in the NFL. I am going to stay with New England and give you a deep sleeper here in Kendrick Lamar Bourne. Again, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, they stink. Okay, we've already highlighted that. Okay, Bourne has been ramping up his activity, though, over the last couple of weeks. Remember, he's coming back from that major knee injury. He played 15 snaps in week 5. That was his first game back from injury, but then he doubled that last week, playing more than double that, playing 34 snaps in week number 6. That was good for a 60% share of the offensive snaps. Now, I do wonder, does he get back to 80, 90% snap share this week? I think he will. And as a primary outside wide receiver, this team has just an absolute dearth at outside wide receiver. They've been trying to play Jalen Polk right there. Keyshawn Boutte was productive there last week, but as we know, he's not a natural separator. I think if Kendrick Lamar Bourne starts ramping up his production and activity, we will certainly see him be a lot more productive for the New England Patriots. He played about 70% of his snaps thus far outside, so I think that gives you a really clear indication of what his role will be on the New England Patriots. All right, we talked about Justin Herbert, so let's talk about Ladd McConkey. Again, taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The rookie has absolutely established himself as the team's best receiver. He's leading the team in routes run, targets, receptions, and yards. The matchup, come on, man. The matchup is nice. Okay, the Cardinals have allowed the 5th most yards, the 6th most touchdowns, and the 2nd most fantasy points per game to inside wide receivers. This is a beautiful matchup for Ladd McConkey. Fire him up for sure. Jameson Williams taking on Minnesota. I don't know if this one counts as a sleeper. I know Baker Mayfield did not count as a sleeper, but does this one count as a sleeper? I'm not sure. Maybe. This one might count as a sleeper. He is currently a top 25 fantasy wide receiver, so I don't know. Maybe this one doesn't count. But you know what? I'm the sole judge of the fantasy tribunal, and we're going to go ahead and allow it. we'll allow it here for Jameson Williams. Sleeper is Jameson Williams. Minnesota has allowed the 9th most fantasy points per game to outside receivers, including the 5th most receptions and yards to the outside. Meanwhile, we talked about Jameson Williams being a top 25 fantasy receiver. The guy's been actually pretty darn consistent, okay? I know he had a super huge pop week in week number 1, but overall, he has had 14 or more PPR points in 4 of his 5 games this year. He's been pretty consistent. Now, that one game where he didn't get to double digits, it was a disaster. That's fine. But again, that's why I kind of sort of consider Jameson Williams to be a sleeper here against Minnesota. All right, finally, let's talk about Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson taking on Philadelphia, and the Eagles have allowed the 5th most yards and the most touchdowns and the 3rd most fantasy points per game to receivers lined up inside. Now, Malik Nabers is, I think, anticipated to come back. He missed 2 weeks here with a concussion, but Wan'Dale has posted double-digit PPR points in 5 of 6 games this year. Again, including those games with Malik Nabers. Wan'Dale Robinson is going to get his targets. By hook or by crook, Wan'Dale Robinson is going to get them targets, man, let me tell you. He was limited Wednesday with an ankle injury, so obviously, we are going to keep an eye on that. So those are your fantasy sleepers at wide receiver and at quarterback. Now, this is not really like a sleeper thing, but I just did want to bring up the the topsy-turvy nature, if you will, of fantasy football. Now, you could have played a roster of, of pretty good players. And I'll lay it out. These guys were all, 75% or more rostered. Okay. You could have played this roster: Dak Prescott, Travis Etienne, James Conner, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison, and Calvin Ridley as your wide receivers 1, 2, and 3. Dallas Goedert, who was a top 4 fantasy tight end at tight end. And you could have flexed in Jerome Ford and Zach Moss, two very popular streaming options there. Now, that is an entire roster. That's a whole ass roster right there. Okay, you've got quarterback, two running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flexes. Okay, that's a whole ass roster. That roster right there, I'm not saying it's the best. It's not. But that is absolutely an acceptable roster. This roster scored you 12 fantasy points last week. 12! Oh my God. Now, I bring this up in comparison to, you could have rostered you could have played a full roster of 0 or 1% rostered players. Again, guys that no one is playing these dudes. No one. Okay. I threw Drake Maye in there, who is 6% rostered at the time. He's higher now. But Drake Maye at quarterback, Sean Tucker, Imari DiMercado at running back. Ain't nobody playing these dudes. At wide receiver, you could have played Bub Means, Kayshon Boutte, and Devon Vile. At tight end, we talked about Dallas Goedert. You could have played Grant Calcaterra. And at the flex spots, you could have played Kyle Juszczyk and Jatavion Sanders. 75% of the people listening to this podcast, they don't know where the hell Jatavion Sanders even plays football. You don't know where Jatavion Sanders plays football. You don't. There's a good third of you who don't know where Bub Means plays football. Stop it. You know what I'm saying? These are the rando of randos. 0 or 1% rostered except for Drake Maye. This team scored 138 fantasy points last week. That is incredible. Incredible. Oh my gosh. The topsy-turvy nature of fantasy football and its true unpredictability. Can you imagine scoring 12 points with Dak Prescott, Etienne, James Conner, and Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave? Etienne, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison, these are all second-round picks. All of them. Dallas Goedert's a top 4 tight end. Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback. What? 12 points. That's insane. That is absolutely bananas. Anyways, I love it. And and I love this. I love the unpredictable nature of fantasy football. Anyways, there you go. It's a little bit shorter of a show today, but that's okay. We're going to let you go, man. Anyways, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be talking about sleeper running backs and sleeper tight ends. But till then, I got to go. But remember, it's never too late to chase your dreams. Peace.